Powell did Scribner's articles in 1875, months prior to his report coming out. So this is the first Grand Canyon map we have published. 1875 in Scribner's, popular magazine at the time. It was a serialized production. So we have the first really accurate map of the Grand Canyon. Glen Canyon coming down, San Juan coming in over here, and Little Colorado River where it should be, and Diamond Creek down here where you do a river trip, a lot of river trips out there on the Walleye Reservation. Cataract Creek, which is Havasu Canyon. First accurate map before his government report comes out. Government report only contains 2 maps. This is one of them. This is up at near the put-in, Green River, Wyoming, and to the mouth of the White River. This is the only other map in there. All it shows is a profile. It's a comparison of the Colorado River with the Mississippi River and gradient. So what we have are the popular Scribner's magazine, Scribner's Illustrated, with the first true map of the Grand Canyon of the Colorado River. This government report is lacking in both of those. Dellenbaugh mentioned the illustrator. As Powell wrote in his reports, he doesn't mention the men of the second expedition. He combines events as if it occurred in one. Dellenbaugh is seeking to rectify this by writing some books. He's asked Powell to write an introduction to one of his books, 1902. Powell writes a letter saying he'd be happy to, but Powell dies before he gets that introduction. So Dellenbaugh tells the story. Put Powell's letter in there saying, yes, there was a second expedition. Yes, the men on the expedition were very valuable. So Dellenbaugh is trying to get them their due. Dellenbaugh was, besides being the artist, he was also helping Thompson with the mapping. The American Geographical Society librarian still holds 2 preliminary maps from Dellenbaugh, and Dellenbaugh publishes those in his books. This is a correlation of Dellenbaugh's from his maps, 1872 and 73, because they have latitude and longitude on them. They can be overlaid on today's GIS. So what you have is in blue, you have Dellenbaugh, and in red, you have GIS. So you can see that even at this point, their surveying and accuracy is pretty good. 95% of the data points are within 2 standard deviations, or a quarter mile. And this is going down the river with all that entails, and actually doing survey, plus overland survey on the up in the Arizona Strip and overland. And if you even go up there today, it's tough. And we're 130 years later. And to do overland surveying today would still involve a lot of difficulties. Francis Marion Bishop worked on the maps prior to the Grand Canyon. This is a Glen Canyon map here. Here we've got Lee's Ferry, there's the Paria River, and Glen Canyon coming down this way. Parts of these were published in the Utah Historical Quarterlies. And both Dellenbaugh and Bishop backed up their data. They made tracings, their own personal copies of these maps. And luckily they did, because they're the only ones that exist today. USGS, National Archives, Library of Congress, you name it. People have looked for maps, draft maps from these expeditions that are nowhere to be found. Mentioned Dellenbaugh's at Arizona Geographical Society. Bishop's are at the Utah State Historical Society. But with gaps. Bishop's has a gap. There's Green River, Wyoming. Gap in here, gap here. The confluence, the Green and the Grand's missing. Part of Glen Canyon's missing. And then Dellenbaugh's maps pick up from down here. So luckily, what I call for these guys is they backed up their data. But personal copies. They weren't backing up their data to send 2 copies to the government. They were doing it for themselves. Here's Bishop overlaid with water. This is early 1870s, and then Powell gets some government funding. 1878, he publishes a report on the lands of the arid region of the western United States, and introduces this map. It had been published by the government before, but he's redoing it. And this is a Scott's rainfall map. It's a little faded, but with isohedral lines, it shows a nice line there at the 100th meridian where increased rainfall and decreased rainfall marked by the 100th meridian. What Powell calls the arid lands of the West. Very important, very visual, and when Powell gets into his arid lands, he comes up with some ideas that he says the land out west is not like it is out east. It can't be laid out and plotted off like we can with farms and ranches and settlements out east. Water is the determining factor out west. And essentially it's the lack of water that's the determining factor. So he is a firm believer in irrigation and reclamation, but he has some certain ideas about it. It should occur up in the headlands. It should occur near to where it should be used. It should be localized and local funded and owned and operated by whoever there was using it in the area. Nowhere does he says the federal government should get involved. But what he says is there's not enough water to do what we do back east, so we have to look at the West differently. Powell also became the head of the Bureau of Ethnology. He was the first director and was in 1879, and until he died in 1902, he was a director. He had been previously an Indian agent. This is somewhere in western Utah, southwestern Utah, probably with the Paiutes. He was an Indian agent. He'd already been studying languages. He did a lot of linguistics with that, and as director, they published a lot of things about Indians in the Southwest. Here he is. This is the picture that's actually over here, all 5, 6 of them, with Powell. A couple other pictures. You see, not only did Powell dress the Native Americans in the wrong clothes for pictures, he also took some liberties with himself. This was actually a studio portrait, but here he is out in the field. J.K. Healer's photos. Linguistically, he plotted the languages, Native American languages, which hold up very well today. Of course, they're not completely accurate, or things have changed since then as far as interpretation of plotting. Here is his letter accepting the directorship of the U.S. Geological Survey. 1881, the USGS was founded. 1879, Clarence King, one of those 4 guys of the great surveys, was director about 18 months, and then Powell became the second director in 1881. And shortly thereafter, Clarence Dutton's Tertiary History of the Grand Canyon District, monograph number 2 from the USGS, a classic. And you'll recognize from that little Scribner's map in Dellenbaugh the accurate course of the Colorado River. This was supposed to be a topo map that I had trouble getting the image up to, but of course, the first topo map around the early 1880s, the first one was the Kaibab, which is the Grand Canyon area, centered right over the Grand Canyon. That was the first USGS topo. As a librarian in special collections, I get a lot of reference questions, and people said,